Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Shirley here. Today we're going to be looking at Mythic N'Zoth finally. We got this down last week for Cutting Edge once again, and this fight is all about timing and positioning, especially for melee. And so we're going to get right into this one by dividing the raid up into two groups, and half of the raid's going to the left, half of it's going to the right to deal with all the tentacles and whatnot off the pole here. And as an arms warrior, I'm going to go ahead and use, your first Memory Lucid Dreams on the big boy Basher Tentacle, and with sweeping strikes there as well, so you're cleaving down anything, in its vicinity. Everything's going to go down really quick there. And at the beginning of the fight here, you just have to spread out preemptively before that first paranoia phase comes out. That way you're not taking unnecessary sanity loss, which is the bar in the middle of the screen at the bottom there. And that's the real hurdle to overcome early on, I'd say, was just getting down, not losing as much sanity as possible for the later stages of the fight is, definitely important. And then we're going to be moving clockwise around the room here to work on the next set of tentacles right when they spawn. We got really lucky there that the Corruptor Tentacle spawned where it was, so I could cleave him down once again with Sweeping Strikes. Speaking of Sweeping Strikes, I am spec'd into collateral damage for this, but other than that, it's just your standard single target kind of build. I'm not running over 40 corruption from this because you don't want things from beyond spawning on prog, especially this fight. And after that, I'm going into the first portal group phase, which is what you're seeing now for Psychus. And we're going to go ahead and immediately charge that first exposed synapse tentacle and work our way in this very particular order pattern thing here. And I'm going to go ahead and just charge down all three of the first ones to, get those out of the way immediately to get some stacks rolling on Psychus himself. And after the third one, I'm pretty much just going to be focusing on Psychus and popping Sweeping Strikes on cooldown and cleaving these synapses with everybody else in our group at the same time, because we've got enough damage here. And after we get to this fifth one, we're bloodlusting to, really secure this kill. But we also have a Fire Mage in our group, so Ignite is just going to melt anything around him, so it's not that big of a deal. I can worry about Psychus himself and not so much about, cleaving down all these tentacles. Now, I will say that once you get to this stage, the seventh tentacle there can be a little finicky sometimes if people, if it's not quite close enough or whatever, so it's not a bad idea to pop Sweeping Strikes and finish it off there, especially because it's usually around execute phase, so you might as well get that free pad in with execute sweeping. And from there, it's, leap back to our body, get out of the realm as fast as possible. And there's a very specific window to do this in before more tentacles spawn on the upper top side realm or whatever. And then it's just up to our first burn phase here on N'Zoth. And we got a pretty good burn there. We're all stacking up, and you have to use your necklaces, separately. If you're watching this, you probably already know about, the way the necklace mechanic works on Mythic. And from there, it's kind of a rinse-repeat, except, different team is going down this time. I'm going to once again be moving clockwise around the room for this first set of tentacles. Spawn immediately after N'Zoth goes immune once again. And then once we're bashing those down, any melee around it, you just want to loosely spread around the tentacles as best you can. That way when Paranoia goes out, you're not already stacked up and just taking sanity loss damage. And fortunately, I was paired with another melee right next to me, so that was very, lucky. And from there, we're moving on to the next set, and it's very rinse-repeat. We got lucky once again here that this Corruptor Tentacle spawned so close to the Bashers, so Sweeping Strikes is really, getting its value in for me here. So, and it's always great that when that happens, not just from a DPS standpoint, but because the Corruptor Tentacle has a bad habit of spawning way off in the middle of nowhere, and you can't really hit it, and you can't ignore it either, so you have to go back out of your way to kill it. Otherwise, it's just going to be beaming people across the room when you're moving on to this next set of tentacles here. And one thing I wanted to point out there as I was rotating around the room to this next set, remember you can just auto-attack N'Zoth even though he's taking way less damage, and, you're still going to be generating rage as a warrior, so it's a nice, little min-max thing. And as we're rotating back around here, we go past the blue marker on the right side of the room. You can't see it here by N'Zoth. We're really pushing past here for these neurons instead of killing them right back those other tentacles, because we want to pre-plan for the next set of tentacle spawns. So that way, after this Mind Grass goes out here, we'll be basically right on top of the spawn, so our Blood Death Knight's, right there, so none of us are getting bopped in the face. And other than that, like, we're gonna be killing these, sweeping down again, except this time we have to worry about the psychophages. I did want to point out another thing with the tentacles. When they spawn, if you're standing way too close to them, you get booped in the air out of melee range, which can be really annoying. So you want to be close to them, but not super close. And the hitbox and the Corruptor tentacle spawn is bigger than it seems. It's not quite as big as the Basher, but it's definitely bigger than what you would think. So many a time I've stood too close to that one and gotten booped back. And maybe if you were planning around it, you could charge back for it, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But otherwise, I'm going to use, Colossus Smash immediately with Sweeping Strikes on those two tentacles, and after we get that first big Test of Might buff off of that, that's when I want to have my Blade Storm available for all those little ads that are around the room there. And hopefully they're grouped up in a decent way at that point, so you're not chasing them around, because sometimes during this next burn phase right here, they can be kind of in the way, but we got lucky there where they were all grouped up. Now this last phase, or second to last, third phase, whatever the hell this phase is very particular. And right here, as you notice, I delayed my CS for just a little bit because I wanted to use that Memory of Lucid Dreams immediately when it came off cooldown. And you might think that that's a bit of a waste of value, because I'm not getting, the full benefit of the Test of Might buff, killing these ads, and then running away to drop the little pools out. But I did that because I want Memory of Lucid Dreams to be back up at a very specific point, and if I delay it any for, like, after this first beam and this second set of dropping these pools out, like, you're just losing too much time with it. And unfortunately, these last couple of phases for melee, not just warriors, but melee in particular, are just awful. There's not really a good excuse for it on Blizzard's part. This last part of the fight is just terrible for melee. You have such little uptime. You're constantly having to run in and out of stuff. Especially after we dropped that second set of pools there. You saw me out. I'm a goblin at the moment anyway, so I rocket jumped out across the room to get away from everybody as fast as I could, because that paranoia goes out immediately afterwards. So you don't want to be stacked up, and that can get very messy there, especially because all the melee are immediately wanting to hit the boss. But I opt to just stand out away from it. That way you're not taking unnecessary sanity loss, because you will run out if, you're getting clipped even once or twice at a bad time. And from here, we're going to be cleaving down these two Thought Harvesters. These guys are kind of a priority target. I'm backing out to drop my pool there, of course, like normal. And we had immunities, I want to say, to soak that first pool there. So we got to kill these Thought Harvesters before they do their Harvest Thought cast. Wow, what an imaginative name. I had to read it there to actually see what it was called. But after that, we're stacking up here and raid soaking that next cast and cleaving down these guys. And the paranoia is here, but we're using a couple of our necks right here. That way we have, as much sanity uptime as we can, and it's just cleaving those things down. Now, I want to primarily be targeting N'Zoth during that portion of the burn, because every little bit of damage on him matters. So this is why I used Memory of Lucid Dreams earlier, because right after those Thought Harvesters go down, we've got this window here before Magni opens the chamber, and this is the only good time in like the entire burn phase that melee has to actually sit here and attack the boss. So that's why I wanted Memory of Lucid Dreams to be back up for it right then, so you can get a full burn with it, do as much damage as possible. And then at a very specific moment, we're going to be taking the gate out. And this is where I use my necklace immediately on the little bomb that's spawned right where we come in at. So my job's super easy right there. We got another hunter that's running off to get the second one. And from there, we're using one necklace. And killing this ad is super straightforward. It's just dodge the swirlies on the ground and make sure that everybody has their necklace up at the appropriate time to, soak the bombs or turn off the bombs, if you want to say. And other than that, they put out this big debuff. I can't remember what it's called. The big purple thing you see on our tank at the moment. Those things just need to be moved out before they expire. If you do get unlucky and it's on a tank and they can't get out, that's happened a few times, then just, back out as melee. It's not that big of a deal. We opted to second potion on this guy, or first potion. There's not really a point to pre-pot on N'Zoth. Not with the gear that we have these days anyway. So we're using our potion on this guy rather than N'Zoth himself, just so we can make sure that he's getting him, down all the way. And we also staggered a few cooldowns here. I believe a lot of the melee in our group ended up using cooldowns on him because we don't get very good uptime on N'Zoth at the end of the fight, so we opted for the melee to do that rather than the ranged or everybody. That way the ranged can use all their cooldowns on N'Zoth here, since, they can obviously attack at range while we're dropping pools and all that stuff. Coming back out here, it's immediately a rinse-repeat of the previous phase of the fight before the door, and we're going to be raid soaking that first Harvest Thoughts cast, moving back to the left here to drop our pools. I did want to say that we have assigned positions for the pools, but it's very rough, right? Like, I'm in the middle of the room, basically, but, I wouldn't get too hung up on, like, precise positionings of that. And after that, we're going to be rotating to the right with the beams, and now we're going to be dropping it on the far side pool area and getting this out, as far as we can in the back. Getting a little tight here, but I unfortunately used my rocket jump to get out of that situation right as Paranoia goes out, so we take a little bit of clip of sanity there, but not the end of the world. Wasn't that big of a deal. I did want to point back, as this mine grass is going out, the very first whatever you call it, the very first time you drop pools in the first part of the phase, I use Heroic Leap to immediately jump across the room. That way you can beat those laser beams before they, force you back into your own pools. Now right here, at the very end of the fight, I opted to pop my Memory Lucid Dreams right before that soak went out, unfortunately, and I didn't know the exact timings of each of these pools because you have such little uptime to actually attack the boss. I should have waited, probably, but now that I'm watching it back, I don't think it frankly matters. I wanted to have memory up for this last execute phase, which I did, and, we definitely got value out of it, but frankly, that's just not a good moment to use it. We clipped the beam there and somehow lived. I don't know how I managed that one, but somehow lived. But unfortunately, the Thought Harvester got me there because our tank went down, I believe, and I got meleeed right there and died anyway. But as we're coming down to the last bit of the burn, he dies at 2%, and down he goes. There's Cutting Edge N'Zoth. I want to say thanks to my guild once again for another Cutting Edge tier. It was great. And I think the video's clipped right here, but I actually got the sword and the helmet off N'Zoth, so, that was cool. Got the loot out of it. Anyway, if you guys have any thoughts or questions, feel free to leave them down below. Thank you much. Let me talk. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.